The cafeteria at Westridge High buzzed with the usual lunchtime chaos. Hundreds of teenagers huddled around circular tables, their conversations creating a constant hum that echoed off the pale green walls. In the far corner, almost hidden beside a large potted plant, sat Maya Chen. Maya wasn't exactly new anymore. She'd transferred to Westridge 3 months ago, but she might as well have been invisible. Most days she ate her packed lunch alone, one hand holding her sandwich while the other turned pages in whatever book had captured her interest that week. Today, it was the history and philosophy of Eastern combat arts. Not exactly light reading for most 16-year-olds, but Maya wasn't most 16-year-olds. She tucked a strand of straight black hair behind her ear as her eyes moved across the page. The cafeteria noise faded into background static as she focused on the words. Her grandfather had given her the book before she left Hong Kong, and reading it made her feel closer to home. "You see that girl?" Trevor Wilson's voice cut through the cafeteria noise as he nudged his friend Dylan. "The one who never talks to anyone?" Trevor sat at what everyone knew was the popular table, though a more accurate description might have been the feared table. At 17, he stood 6'2" with broad shoulders and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. Until recently, he'd been the star forward on Westridge's basketball team. That had changed 2 weeks ago when Coach Bennett had benched him in favor of a sophomore with a better attitude. The decision had turned Trevor's typical unpleasantness into something darker. "Yeah, what about her?" Dylan asked, glancing toward Maya without much interest. Trevor's eyes narrowed. "She thinks she's better than everyone. Have you seen how she never looks at anybody? Just sits there reading those weird books." "I don't think she thinks anything about anyone," said Zoe, rolling her eyes from across the table. "She's just quiet." "No one's that quiet unless they're hiding something," Trevor insisted, stabbing at his cafeteria spaghetti. Red sauce splattered onto the table. "Or unless they think they're too good to talk to the rest of us." The truth was, Trevor needed someone to focus his anger on. The basketball situation had humiliated him in front of the entire school. His dad hadn't let him hear the end of it either. Benched for attitude? "Are you kidding me? No son of mine gets benched for anything." Maya turned another page, completely unaware she'd become the target of Trevor's frustration. "I bet I could get her to talk," Trevor said, a slow smile spreading across his face. Zoe frowned. "Maybe just leave her alone?" "What's she ever done to you?" "Nothing," Trevor admitted with a shrug. "That's the point. She acts like we don't exist." Dylan, always eager to please Trevor, laughed. "What are you thinking? Scare her a little?" Trevor considered this as he twirled spaghetti around his fork. The cafeteria served it every Thursday. Overcooked noodles drowning in bright red sauce that stained everything it touched. An idea began forming in his mind. "Watch this," he said, standing up with his tray. Across the room, Maya paused her reading. Without looking up, she sensed a change in the energy around her. 6 years of intensive training had taught her to notice things other people missed. Shifts in movement, changes in sound patterns, the feeling of being watched. Someone was moving toward her, and not in the casual way people normally navigated the cafeteria. She turned a page in her book, pretending not to notice while staying completely aware. Maya's life before Westridge would have surprised her classmates. In Hong Kong, she'd been someone different, not necessarily more outgoing, but more herself. The granddaughter of a respected martial arts master, she'd begun training when she was 5. By 12, she was competing internationally. At 14, she'd earned her 3rd-degree black belt and helped teach younger students at her grandfather's studio. Then her father's job had transferred him to this small American city. Overnight, Maya had gone from being known and respected to being completely anonymous. She didn't mind the anonymity much. It was peaceful in its way. What she minded was the loss of her training community. Her parents had found a local studio for her, but it wasn't the same. Nothing was the same. So she kept to herself, maintained her training alone in her bedroom or in the park when weather permitted, and read books that connected her to what she'd left behind. She wasn't unfriendly. She just hadn't found anyone who seemed interested in knowing the real her. Trevor weaved between the tables, his tray balanced in one hand as he approached Maya's corner. Behind him, Dylan and a couple other boys watched eagerly. Zoe looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. "Hey, new girl," Trevor called when he was about 10 feet away. Maya looked up, her face expressionless. She wasn't technically new, but she didn't bother correcting him. You know, it's kind of rude to never talk to anyone, Trevor continued, moving closer. People might think you're stuck up. Maya marked her place in the book with a finger. I talk when I have something to say, she replied, her voice quiet but clear with just a hint of an accent. Trevor hadn't expected her to respond so calmly. He'd wanted to see fear, or at least discomfort. The lack of reaction annoyed him even more. What's with the books all the time? Trying to prove you're smarter than everyone? He took another step forward. Maya simply watched him, noting the tension in his shoulders, the slightly unsteady way he held the tray, the anger just beneath the surface of his expression. In her grandfather's studio, she'd learned to read people before they made their move. It's just a book about history, she said. I like history. At a nearby table, people were starting to watch the interaction. Trevor was aware of the eyes on him, which only strengthened his resolve. He couldn't back down now. History, huh? He said, stepping even closer. Sounds boring. Maya shrugged and returned to her book. Not to me. That dismissal was the final straw for Trevor. He'd been looking for an outlet for his anger, and her calm indifference was like a match to gasoline. Hey, I'm talking to you, he said loudly. The cafeteria began to quiet as more students noticed the confrontation. Mrs. Diaz, the teacher on lunch duty, was helping a student at the far end of the room and hadn't noticed yet. I think we're done talking, Maya said without looking up from her book. Trevor's face flushed red. He glanced back at his friends, then at the students watching from nearby tables. He couldn't walk away now. Something had to happen. You know what your problem is? He said, moving to stand directly beside her table. You think you're special, but you're not. Maya slowly closed her book and placed it on the table. She didn't look afraid, just mildly inconvenienced, which infuriated Trevor even more. I don't think I'm special, she said quietly. I just want to read my book and eat my lunch in peace. Trevor looked down at his tray of spaghetti, then back at Maya's pristine white sweater. It would be so easy. A little accident that would teach her a lesson and give him back some of the respect he'd lost when Coach benched him. Sometimes peace is overrated, he said, adjusting his grip on the tray. Maya noticed the subtle shift in his posture, the way his eyes flickered from the tray to her sweater. She understood his intention before he even moved. She stayed perfectly still, but beneath the table her feet shifted slightly, grounding her. Her breathing remained steady. Her muscles relaxed while staying ready. Years of training had prepared Maya for moments that required split-second decisions. Her grandfather had taught her that the best defense began long before any physical movement. It began with awareness, with reading the situation and being prepared. Trevor smiled at his friends across the room, signaling that something was about to happen. Dylan grinned back. Zoe looked away, not wanting to watch. The cafeteria had grown unusually quiet. It was as if everyone sensed the tension building between the tall, angry boy and the quiet girl in the corner. Mrs. Diaz finally noticed the situation and began making her way across the cafeteria. But she was still too far away to intervene. Maya took a slow, deep breath. Trevor tightened his grip on the tray. The moment of decision had arrived. The next 3 seconds seemed to unfold in slow motion. Trevor took a half step forward, tilting the tray of spaghetti just enough to make it look like an accident waiting to happen. Whoop, he said loudly for the benefit of his audience. I think I'm going to trip. To everyone watching, it appeared Trevor was simply walking past Maya's table when he suddenly lost his balance. A perfect cover for deliberately dumping his lunch all over the quiet girl in the white sweater. But Maya saw through the act immediately. Her eyes flicked from Trevor's face to his hands to his feet, noticing how he was perfectly balanced despite his performance of stumbling. This wasn't a loss of balance. This was intentional. In that moment, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training took over. Maya's right hand shot up from beneath the table with startling speed. Her fingers wrapped firmly around Trevor's wrist, stopping the downward motion of the tray with such precision that not a single noodle flew off the plate. Her grip applied pressure to exactly the right point, enough to control but not enough to hurt. The movement was so fast that most students only saw the aftermath. Trevor froze in mid-fall, his face a picture of shock. The tray of spaghetti suspended inches above Maya's pristine sweater. I think you dropped something, Maya said, her voice quiet but clear in the suddenly silent cafeteria. Trevor tried to pull his arm away, but found he couldn't break free without spilling the food on himself. Maya's grip was like iron, though she appeared to be using almost no effort at all. "What the—" Trevor started, genuine surprise replacing his fake stumble. "Let go." "Are you sure?" Maya asked calmly. "You might make a mess." For the first time, students at nearby tables got a good look at the exchange. The scene was bizarre. The school's most feared bully caught mid-prank by the quiet transfer student who had somehow stopped him without even standing up. Mrs. Diaz finally reached their table. "What's going on here?" she demanded, looking from Trevor to Maya and back again. Maya released Trevor's wrist. With his arm suddenly free, Trevor had to quickly steady the tray to avoid spilling its contents down the front of his own shirt. "Nothing," Trevor muttered, his face flushing red. "Just tripped. He was bringing me some lunch," Maya said with a polite smile. "But I already have mine." "Thank you anyway, Trevor." The use of his name caught Trevor off guard. He hadn't realized she even knew who he was. Mrs. Diaz looked skeptical. "Is that true, Trevor?" "Yeah. Whatever," he mumbled, unable to admit what he'd actually been trying to do. "I was just leaving." As Trevor retreated to his table, whispers erupted across the cafeteria. The story was already growing with each retelling, even though it had happened seconds ago. By the end of the lunch period, some would swear they saw the new girl catch the tray with one finger. Maya returned to her book as if nothing unusual had happened. But inside, her heart was pounding. She hadn't meant to react so instinctively. For months, she'd been careful to blend in, to not draw attention to herself or her abilities. Now she'd exposed a part of herself she'd been keeping private. Back at his table, Trevor slammed his tray down, splattering spaghetti sauce across the surface. "What happened?" Dylan asked, eyes wide. "She like ninja grabbed you or something." "She got lucky," Trevor growled, but the excuse sounded hollow even to his own ears. "She just caught me off guard." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Looked like more than luck to me. Did you see how fast she moved?" "Whatever." Trevor stabbed at his spaghetti, appetite gone. "She made me look stupid in front of everyone." "To be fair," Zoe said, "you were trying to dump food on her." Trevor glared at her. "Whose side are you on?" "I'm not on any side," Zoe replied. "I just think maybe you should leave her alone now." "No way." Trevor's knuckles turned white around his fork. "This isn't over." Across the cafeteria, the initial excitement was dying down as students returned to their conversations. But Maya could feel the occasional glance in her direction, the subtle shift in how people were looking at her. She sighed quietly. She hadn't wanted attention, hadn't wanted to stand out. Her parents had encouraged her to make friends at her new school, to put herself out there, but she'd found it difficult. Everything was different here, the language, the customs, the way people interacted. At her grandfather's studio in Hong Kong, she'd been respected for her skills, her discipline, her focus. Here, those same qualities had made her seem aloof, unapproachable, so she'd kept to herself, finding comfort in books and solitude while she adjusted to her new life. Now that comfort zone had been disturbed. She'd revealed a glimpse of her true self, and she wasn't sure if that was a good thing. The bell signaling the end of lunch period rang. Maya gathered her things, tucked her book into her backpack, and threw away her lunch trash. As she walked toward the exit, she noticed people watching her, some whispering to their friends as she passed. In her next class, American History, Maya took her usual seat in the back corner. A girl named Lily, who had never spoken to her before, leaned over. "Is it true what they're saying? About what happened in the cafeteria?" Lily whispered. Maya shrugged. "Not much happened. Trevor almost spilled his lunch, that's all." "That's not what people are saying," Lily persisted. "They're saying you moved so fast no one could see it. Like some kung fu movie." "People exaggerate," Maya said, opening her textbook to signal the end of the conversation. But the whispers continued throughout the afternoon. By the time the final bell rang, the story had transformed completely. According to the latest version, Maya had caught every single piece of falling spaghetti in midair, then arranged them back on Trevor's plate without breaking a single noodle. Maya shouldered her backpack and headed for the exit, hoping to make a quick escape before anyone else could ask her about the incident. She just wanted to get home, to the safety and privacy of her bedroom where she could practice her forms in peace. She was halfway to the bus stop when she heard footsteps behind her. Too many footsteps. She didn't need to turn around to know who was following her. "Hey, new girl," Trevor's voice called out. "We need to talk." Maya stopped and turned slowly. Trevor stood about 10 feet away. He wasn't alone. Dylan and 2 other boys from the basketball team flanked him. Their body language screamed confrontation. "There's nothing to talk about," Maya said calmly, though her mind was racing through potential scenarios. 4 against 1. Not ideal odds, but she'd faced worse in competitions. "Nobody makes me look stupid," Trevor said, taking a step forward, especially not some quiet nobody who thinks she's better than everyone. Maya noticed a small crowd beginning to gather at a safe distance. Word of the confrontation had spread quickly, and students were eager to see the next chapter unfold. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Maya replied, "and I didn't make you look stupid." "You did that yourself." Trevor's face darkened. "You think you're funny? Let's see how funny you are when there's no teachers around to save you." Maya set her backpack down carefully on the pavement. "I don't want trouble." "Should have thought of that before you embarrassed me in front of the whole school," Trevor said, cracking his knuckles theatrically. Maya took a deep breath, centering herself. She could feel her grandfather's voice in her head. "Fighting is always the last option, Maya. A true master avoids conflict whenever possible. But when conflict is unavoidable, a true master ends it quickly, with minimal harm." "Walk away, Trevor," she said, giving him one last chance. "This won't go the way you think," Trevor laughed, looking back at his friends. "You hear this? She's threatening me now." "Not a threat," Maya said, shifting her stance slightly. "Just a fact. Trevor had had enough." He lunged forward, arm pulled back for a wild punch aimed at Maya's face. In that moment, time seemed to slow down again for Maya. Years of training, of discipline, of practice had prepared her for precisely this kind of situation. Her grandfather had taught her that real martial arts wasn't about showing off or hurting others. It was about control, about using an opponent's energy against them, about ending conflict with minimal damage. Maya watched Trevor's fist coming toward her and made her decision. The quiet girl wasn't going to be quiet anymore. Trevor's fist cut through the air, aiming straight for Maya's face. To the gathered students watching from a safe distance, it seemed like the quiet girl was about to get hurt badly. Trevor was bigger, stronger, and he had his friends backing him up. The odds looked impossible. But Maya saw the punch coming as if it were moving through water. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "Speed comes from relaxation, not tension." While Trevor's body was rigid with anger, Maya remained loose, balanced, ready. She didn't try to block the punch. Instead, she simply wasn't there when it arrived. With a subtle shift of her weight, Maya moved 3 inches to the left, just enough for Trevor's fist to sail past her ear. The momentum of his failed punch pulled him off balance, exactly as she had anticipated. Before Trevor could recover, Maya's palm made contact with his shoulder, not a strike, but a carefully placed redirect that used his own forward motion against him. To the onlookers, it almost looked like she'd just touched him lightly, but the effect was dramatic. Trevor stumbled forward, trying desperately to regain his balance, and ended up face down on the pavement. The crowd gasped. Nobody had even seen Maya throw a punch, yet somehow Trevor was on the ground. "What the?" Dylan started, looking from Trevor to Maya in disbelief. Trevor pushed himself up, his face red with rage and embarrassment. "Get her!" he shouted to his friends. Dylan and the other 2 boys hesitated for just a second, suddenly less certain about this confrontation. But peer pressure and loyalty won out. They moved forward together, thinking their numbers would overwhelm the small girl. Maya took a deep breath, centering herself again. 3 opponents at once was more complicated, but the principles remained the same. When outnumbered, her grandfather had taught, control the space and timing. Never let them coordinate. As Dylan reached for her, Maya stepped into his space rather than away, surprising him. Her forearm connected with his wrist in a simple deflection that spun him sideways into the path of the second boy, Blake. The 2 collided awkwardly. The third boy, Nate, was more cautious after seeing what had happened to the others. He circled around, trying to grab Maya from behind while she was occupied with his friends. It might have worked on someone else, but Maya had spent years training her awareness of space and movement. Without even looking back, she sidestepped at the perfect moment, causing Nate to grab empty air. In the same fluid motion, she hooked her foot behind his ankle and shifted her weight. Nate found himself falling, unable to catch his balance. "Stay down," Maya advised calmly as he hit the ground. Please. By now, Trevor had gotten back to his feet. His earlier cockiness had vanished, replaced by confusion and growing fear. This wasn't going according to plan at all. The quiet girl who never bothered anyone who he thought would be an easy target moved like nothing he'd ever seen before. "What are you?" he demanded, backing away slightly. Maya didn't answer. She simply stood in a neutral stance, hands open at her sides, waiting. She hadn't thrown a single punch yet. Every move had been defensive, using their own momentum and poor balance against them. The growing crowd of students watched in stunned silence. Many had their phones out, recording the unbelievable scene. No one had expected this outcome. The quiet new girl defending herself against 4 boys without even seeming to try hard. Trevor looked at his friends, who were picking themselves up off the ground, then back at Maya. His pride wouldn't let him walk away. Not with so many witnesses, not after coming this far. With a yell meant to intimidate, he charged forward. This time, Maya could see the desperation in his movement. He wasn't thinking, just reacting from a place of anger and humiliation. She sidestepped again. But Trevor had anticipated this and adjusted his trajectory. For a brief moment, his hand caught her sleeve. A flash of triumph crossed his face. He'd finally made contact. But Maya had allowed this, setting up for what came next. She rotated her arm in a small circle, catching Trevor's wrist in a simple lock that used his own grip against him. The hold bent his arm at an awkward angle that wasn't quite painful but completely controlled his movement. To maintain his balance, Trevor had to follow where the hold directed him, ending up on his knees. "Let go," he shouted, his voice cracking slightly. "Are you done?" Maya asked quietly, maintaining the hold with minimal pressure. "This is crazy," someone in the crowd exclaimed. "She hasn't even hit anyone." It was true. Throughout the entire confrontation, Maya hadn't thrown a single strike. Every move had been defensive, designed to neutralize rather than harm. Years of training had taught her that true martial arts wasn't about hurting opponents. It was about control, about ending conflict with minimal force. Trevor struggled against the wrist lock, but found that the more he fought, the more uncomfortable the position became. It was a perfect control technique. It didn't cause injury unless the person being held insisted on fighting against it. "Fine. I'm done," Trevor finally conceded, his face flushed with humiliation. Maya immediately released him and stepped back, maintaining her balanced stance just in case. Trevor rubbed his wrist, though the hold hadn't actually hurt him. His pride was far more injured than his body. Dylan and the others kept their distance now, the fight completely gone from their posture. They looked at Trevor, waiting for his cue on what to do next. "You got lucky," Trevor muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. Everyone present knew luck had nothing to do with what they'd just witnessed. The crowd of students had grown larger, with kids from all grades watching in amazement. The story of what happened in the cafeteria had spread quickly throughout the school. But this confrontation had exceeded all expectations. Among the onlookers was Mr. Winters, the vice principal, who had been alerted by a concerned student. He pushed through the crowd just as Trevor was getting back on his feet. "What's going on here?" Mr. Winters demanded, looking from the 4 boys to Maya and back again. No one spoke at first. Then several voices from the crowd began talking at once. Trevor tried to jump Maya. "She took down all 4 of them. You should have seen it." "Mr. Winters, she didn't even hit anyone." Mr. Winters held up his hands for silence, one at a time. "Ms. Chen, would you like to explain what's happening?" Maya hesitated. She'd been raised to respect authority figures, but she also knew that explaining would mean admitting to being involved in a fight, even if she hadn't started it. "There was a misunderstanding," she said finally, deciding to take the diplomatic route. "It's resolved now." Mr. Winters looked skeptical. "A misunderstanding that required—" He gestured at the 4 boys who were still catching their breath. "Whatever this was?" Trevor, seeing a chance to salvage some dignity, spoke up. "We were just messing around, Mr. Winters, no big deal." The vice principal's expression made it clear he didn't believe that for a second. "All 5 of you to my office, now." As they walked toward the school building, the crowd parted to let them through. Maya could feel the stares, could hear the whispers. Her attempt to stay unnoticed at her new school had definitely failed. Lily, from Maya's history class, fell into step beside her. "That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen," she said quietly. "Where did you learn to do that?" "My grandfather taught me," Maya replied, adjusting her backpack strap. "Since I was little." You have to teach me sometime, Lily said with genuine admiration. Just the basics, even. Maya looked at her in surprise. It was the first time someone at Westridge had shown interest in something she cared about. Maybe, she said with a small smile. It felt strange, smiling at school. She hadn't done much of that since moving here. In the vice principal's office, Mr. Winters had them sit in separate areas while he called their parents. Trevor and his friends kept shooting glances at Maya, their earlier aggression replaced by confused respect. When Mr. Winters stepped out to make copies of the incident report, Trevor finally spoke directly to Maya. "How did you do that?" he asked, genuine curiosity breaking through his wounded pride. Maya considered ignoring him but decided against it. "Training," she said simply. "Lots of training? Like karate or something?" "Kung Fu, Wing Chun and Tai Chi mostly. I've practiced almost every day since I was 5. Trevor nodded slowly, processing this information. "That's why you never dropped the books you're always reading. They're about that stuff." "Some of them," Maya acknowledged. "My grandfather says understanding the philosophy is as important as the physical techniques." For a moment, something like respect flickered across Trevor's face. Then Mr. Winters returned and the conversation ended. Outside, the story of what had happened was spreading across the school and beyond. Video clips from students' phones were already being shared, though most had only captured parts of the brief confrontation. By tomorrow morning, Maya knew, her days of being invisible at Westridge High would be over for good. Maya sat quietly in the uncomfortable chair outside Principal Garcia's office, hands folded in her lap. Her parents would arrive soon, and she wasn't looking forward to explaining why they'd been called to the school. Across the waiting area, Trevor and his friends sat with varying expressions of nervousness and resentment. The secretary's phone buzzed. "Mr. Garcia will see you now, Maya," she said, gesturing toward the door. Inside the office, Principal Garcia sat behind his desk, while Mr. Winters stood by the window. A third person was there too, Officer Chen from the school's security team, who was reviewing something on a tablet. "Please sit down," Principal Garcia said, his expression serious but not unkind. Maya took the offered chair, back straight, hands still folded in her lap. She'd been raised to respect authority, to take responsibility for her actions. Even though she hadn't started the confrontation, she had participated in it. "Ms. Chen," Principal Garcia began, "I understand there was an incident after school today." "Yes, sir," Maya responded simply. "Would you like to tell us your version of what happened?" Maya took a deep breath. "Trevor and I had a misunderstanding at lunch. After school, he and his friends approached me. They seemed upset. When Trevor tried to hit me, I defended myself. I didn't hurt anyone." Mr. Winters raised an eyebrow. "According to multiple witness statements, you took down 4 boys without throwing a single punch. Is that accurate?" Maya hesitated. "I use defensive techniques only. My grandfather taught me to avoid causing harm whenever possible." Officer Chen looked up from his tablet. "We have several videos of the incident," he said, turning the screen so Maya could see. The footage was shaky but clear enough. It showed Trevor's attempted punch and Maya's effortless redirection that sent him to the ground. "That's quite impressive," Officer Chen commented. "You've obviously had extensive training." Maya nodded. "Since I was 5. My grandfather runs a martial arts school in Hong Kong." Principal Garcia leaned forward. "While I'm glad you were able to defend yourself without causing injuries, fighting on school grounds is against our policies. You understand that, don't you?" "Yes, sir. I apologize for not walking away. I should have tried harder to avoid the confrontation." The 3 adults exchanged glances, seemingly surprised by her willingness to accept responsibility. "Well," Principal Garcia said, "given the circumstances and the video evidence showing you were clearly defending yourself against multiple aggressors, I think we can be lenient in your case. However, I will need to call your parents and discuss this with them." "They're on their way," Maya said quietly. "I texted them." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. The secretary poked her head in. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen are here." Maya's parents entered, concern etched on their faces. Her father, dressed in a business suit, looked confused. Her mother immediately came to Maya's side, placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "What's happened?" Mr. Chen asked. "Is Maya in trouble?" Principal Garcia gestured for them to sit. "Your daughter was involved in an incident today. But before you worry, I think you should see this." Officer Chen handed the tablet to Maya's parents. They watched the video in silence, their expressions changing from concern to surprise. "Maya," her mother whispered. "You used your grandfather's techniques." Maya nodded, looking down at her hands. Her father looked up at the school officials. "My daughter defended herself. She is trained in martial arts since she was a child. As you can see, she used minimal force." "We understand that," Principal Garcia assured them. "The other students involved have admitted they instigated the confrontation. They will face appropriate consequences for their actions." Mr. Winters stepped forward. "However, our school has a zero-tolerance policy regarding physical altercations on school grounds. While we recognize Maya was defending herself, we still need to address her participation." Maya's father straightened in his chair. "With all due respect, you cannot punish a student for protecting herself from 4 attackers." "We don't intend to be harsh," Principal Garcia clarified. "Given the circumstances, we're recommending a warning for Maya, along with a mandatory session with our school counselor to discuss non-physical conflict resolution strategies for the future." Maya's parents exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. "As for the boys involved," Principal Garcia continued, "they'll receive more substantial consequences, suspension and mandatory counseling sessions." After discussing a few more details, the meeting concluded. As Maya and her parents left the office, they passed Trevor sitting alone, his friends having already had their meetings. He didn't meet Maya's eyes. The ride home was quiet at first. Then Maya's father spoke up. "I'm not angry, Maya. You defended yourself appropriately, but I am concerned that you found yourself in that situation to begin with. Is this the first time these boys have bothered you?" "Trevor tried to spill food on me at lunch," Maya explained. "I stopped him. He didn't like being embarrassed." Her mother turned in her seat. "Why didn't you tell us you were having problems at school?" Maya shrugged. "I handled it." "Yes, you did," her father agreed with a small smile. "Your grandfather will be proud when we tell him. But next time, please let us know if something is happening. We want to help you adjust to your new school." "It's not so new anymore," Maya said quietly. "I've been here for months." Her mother's expression softened. "Have you made any friends yet?" Maya thought of Lily, who had walked beside her and asked to learn some basics. Maybe, after today, things might be different. The next morning, Maya's prediction proved accurate. As soon as she stepped off the bus, she could feel the change. Students who had never noticed her before now watched as she passed. Some whispered to their friends, others smiled or nodded in greeting. In her first period class, a boy named Ken leaned over. "That was incredible what you did yesterday. Where did you learn to fight like that?" "It's not about fighting," Maya corrected gently. "It's about balance and control. Could you show me sometime?" he asked eagerly. Before Maya could answer, 2 other students joined the conversation, asking similar questions. Throughout the morning, Maya found herself the center of attention, something entirely new for her. By lunchtime, the video of the confrontation had spread beyond the school. Students from other schools had shared it, and it had even appeared on a local community page with the caption, "Don't judge a book by its cover. Quiet student shows amazing skills." Maya entered the cafeteria, bracing herself for more attention. To her surprise, Lily waved her over to a table where several other students were sitting. "Saved you a seat," Lily called out. For a moment, Maya hesitated, clutching her lunch bag and book. Then she walked over and sat down. "This is Maya," Lily announced to the group, though the introduction was hardly necessary at this point. "Maya, this is Tanya, Raj, and Chris." "Hi," Maya said shyly. "That video was epic," Chris said with genuine admiration. "Where did you learn that stuff?" For the first time since arriving at Westridge High, Maya found herself engaged in a real conversation with her peers. She told them about her grandfather's studio in Hong Kong, about growing up training every day before and after school, about the philosophy behind the movements. "It's not about fighting," she explained again. "My grandfather always says that a true martial artist should be able to defuse a situation without throwing a single punch." "Well, it worked," Raj observed. Trevor and his friends looked completely shocked. Speaking of Trevor, Maya noticed he wasn't at his usual table. His friends were there, looking subdued, but Trevor himself was absent. After lunch, Maya headed to her history class. As she walked through the hallway, she spotted Trevor at his locker. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away, his expression unreadable. Maya hesitated, then made a decision. She walked over to him. "Hey," she said simply. Trevor glanced around, seemingly checking if anyone was watching this interaction. Many were. What do you want? He asked, his voice lacking its usual edge. I wanted to say I'm sorry about yesterday, Maya said, surprising him. Not for defending myself, but for embarrassing you. That wasn't my intention. Trevor stared at her in disbelief. You're apologizing to me?
After what I tried to do?
Maya shrugged. My grandfather says holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. A reluctant smile tugged at the corner of Trevor's mouth. Your grandfather says a lot of things, huh? He does, Maya acknowledged with a small smile of her own. Trevor closed his locker. Well, I'm suspended for 3 days starting tomorrow, and I have to see the school counselor twice a week when I get back. I got a warning and 1 counseling session, Maya offered. An awkward silence fell between them. Then Trevor sighed. Look, I was a jerk. I've been a jerk for a while now. Losing my spot on the team messed with my head, but that's no excuse. Maya nodded, accepting his indirect apology. Everyone struggles sometimes. The warning bell rang, signaling they had 2 minutes to get to class. I should go, Maya said, turning to leave. Hey, Trevor called after her. She looked back. Those moves you did, they were pretty amazing. It wasn't exactly an olive branch, but it was something. Maya gave him a small nod and continued to class. As she took her seat, she realized that for the first time since moving to this new country, this new school, she felt like she might actually belong. 3 months had passed since the day Trevor tried to spill spaghetti on Maya. Winter had settled over the town, coating Westridge High in a thin layer of frost each morning. As Maya walked through the school entrance, she pulled her scarf tighter against the cold. Maya, wait up! She turned to see Lily hurrying across the parking lot, her breath visible in the chilly air. Did you finish the history assignment? Lily asked as she fell into step beside Maya. Just last night, Maya replied. Those primary sources were harder to analyze than I expected. The 2 girls made their way through the crowded hallway toward their lockers. Unlike 3 months ago, Maya now navigated the school with confidence. She smiled at classmates who greeted her, stopping occasionally for brief conversations. The change hadn't happened overnight. After the incident with Trevor, Maya had gradually opened up to the people who reached out to her. She still wasn't the most outgoing student at Westridge, but she was no longer the invisible girl hiding behind books. Are we still on for lunch? Raj asked, joining them at Maya's locker. Of course, Maya nodded. Tanya's bringing those cookies her mom made. The cinnamon ones? Raj's eyes lit up. Perfect day for them. It's freezing outside. Maya smiled as she gathered her books for first period. Having friends, real friends who knew her, not just the quiet girl from Hong Kong, was still something she was getting used to. It felt good. See you guys in calculus, Lily said, heading off to her first class. As Maya made her way to English literature, she passed the gym where the basketball team was having an early morning practice. Through the small window in the door, she caught a glimpse of Trevor running drills with his teammates. He'd returned to the team a month ago, after working his way back into Coach Bennett's good graces. The suspension had been a wake-up call for Trevor. When he returned to school, many expected him to be angry, looking for revenge. Instead, he'd kept his head down, focused on his classes, and started meeting regularly with the school counselor. Maya continued to her class, thinking about how much had changed since that day in the cafeteria. She had changed too, not just in having friends, but in finding her voice at Westridge. During lunch, Maya sat with her now regular group of friends. Their table had grown over the past months to include several others who'd been drawn to Maya's quiet confidence and her friends' easy acceptance. So, Chris said between bites of his sandwich, when's the next club meeting? Tomorrow after school, Maya replied. We're focusing on breathing techniques and basic stances. The martial arts and meditation club had been Maya's idea, born from all the questions she'd received about her training after the video spread. When dozens of students expressed interest in learning, Maya had approached Mr. Winters about starting an official school club. To her surprise, the vice principal had been enthusiastic. I think it's an excellent idea, he'd told her, especially if you emphasize the discipline and philosophy aspects, not just the physical techniques. With her parents' support and her grandfather's long-distance guidance via weekly video calls, Maya had structured the club around the core principles she'd grown up with: respect, discipline, control, and balance, both physical and mental. I still can't get that horse stance right, Tanya complained good-naturedly. My thighs feel like they're on fire after 10 seconds. That's how you know you're doing it correctly, Maya said with a smile. It gets easier with practice. Easy for you to say, Raj laughed. You've been doing this since kindergarten. Maya was about to respond when she noticed Trevor enter the cafeteria with a few of his teammates. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away and headed to his usual table. Unlike the old days, Trevor's table was no longer the feared table. The basketball players still sat together, but the atmosphere had changed. There was less posturing, less intimidation of passing students. Have you thought more about what Mr. Garcia suggested? Lily asked, drawing Maya's attention back to their conversation. Principal Garcia had called Maya to his office last week to discuss expanding the club's activities. The elementary school principal reached out to me, he'd explained. They've been having some bullying issues with their 5th graders. She wondered if your club might consider doing a demonstration and talk about conflict resolution. I'm still thinking about it, Maya admitted. I've never really talked in front of young kids before. You'd be great, Tanya encouraged. You explain things so clearly in the club meetings. Plus, Chris added, those kids would think you're the coolest person ever once you show them a few moves. The bell signaling the end of lunch period rang. As Maya gathered her things, she found herself thinking about Principal Garcia's request. Maybe she could make a difference for those younger students. Her grandfather always said that teaching others was the highest form of learning. Later that afternoon, in her final class of the day, Maya was surprised when Trevor took the empty seat next to her in physics. He usually sat on the other side of the room. Hey, he said quietly as he unpacked his notebook. Hey, Maya replied, equally subdued. They hadn't spoken much since his return from suspension. There was no hostility between them anymore, but they weren't exactly friends either. They had developed a sort of mutual respect, acknowledging each other in the hallways, exchanging brief greetings when their paths crossed. As Mr. Peterson began his lecture on momentum and impulse, Trevor slid a folded piece of paper toward Maya. Curious, she opened it under her desk. Can we talk after class? Maya glanced at him, then wrote a simple yes and passed the note back. When the final bell rang, Maya packed her bag slowly, waiting as other students filed out. Trevor lingered as well, seemingly nervous about whatever he wanted to discuss. Once they were alone, he spoke. I heard about the elementary school thing. Principal Garcia mentioned it at our last counseling session. Maya nodded, unsure where this was going. I've been thinking, Trevor continued, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. Maybe I could help? With the anti-bullying talk, I mean. Maya looked at him in surprise. You want to help? Yeah, he shrugged, looking uncomfortable but determined. I mean, I was the worst bully in this school. Who better to talk to kids about why not to do it? Maya considered this. It was true. Trevor had first-hand experience with being the aggressor, with feeling the need to intimidate others to build himself up. And over the past months, she'd seen genuine change in him. That's actually a really good idea, she said finally. Relief flickered across Trevor's face. Really, you think so? I do, Maya nodded. The kids might listen to both perspectives, someone who was bullied and someone who did the bullying but learned better. Exactly. Trevor seemed encouraged by her response. I've been thinking about it a lot in my counseling sessions, about why I acted the way I did. Losing my spot on the team wasn't the real reason. It was just the final straw. Maya waited, sensing he needed to say more. My dad, Trevor hesitated. He's pretty tough. Nothing's ever good enough for him. When I lost my starting position, he made me feel like I was nothing. So I tried to make others feel the same way. And now? Maya asked quietly. Now I'm trying to be better. Trevor met her eyes directly. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, but I don't want to be that guy anymore. Maya nodded, recognizing the sincerity in his words. Then I think you should definitely help with the elementary school presentation. Really? Yes, Maya smiled slightly. My grandfather always says that true strength is shown in how we rebuild ourselves after we fall. Trevor laughed. Your grandfather and his sayings. They usually turn out to be right, Maya said with a shrug. They walked out of the classroom together, continuing to discuss ideas for the elementary school presentation. Their conversation was tentative but genuine. Not quite friendship yet, but something moving in that direction. As they reached the main hallway, Maya spotted Lily, Raj, and the others waiting by the front doors. "I should go," she said. "My friends are waiting." Trevor nodded. "Yeah, me too. Basketball practice and tomorrow after school. We can talk more about the presentation." "Sounds good," Trevor agreed. "Maybe I could check out your club sometime too, if that's okay." The request surprised Maya, but she found herself nodding. "We meet in the small gym at 3:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Everyone's welcome?" "Cool, thanks." As Maya joined her friends and headed out into the winter afternoon, she thought about how unpredictable life could be. 6 months ago, she'd been the lonely new girl, missing her home in Hong Kong, hiding behind books. 3 months ago, she'd faced down a bully who thought she'd be an easy target, and now that same bully was asking to join her club, offering to help others learn from his mistakes. What was that about? Lily asked, nodding toward Trevor as he headed toward the gym. "A new beginning, I think," Maya replied. As they walked home together, snow began to fall gently around them. Maya turned her face upward, feeling the soft flakes land on her skin. This place was feeling more like home every day. She still missed Hong Kong, still video called her grandfather every weekend to show him the form she was practicing, still read her books about martial arts history and philosophy. But now those things were part of a bigger life, one with friends who accepted her, teachers who respected her, and even former enemies who were learning from her. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. "The greatest victory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." Maya smiled. It seemed everyone at Westridge High was learning that lesson in their own way.